Hello, welcome to this primary candidate forum co-sponsored by the Daily Record newspaper and the League of Women Voters. My name is Charlie Sorensen and I am the Voter Services Chair for the League of Women Voters, Kittitas County. Founded in 1920, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization with 800 affiliates across the country. It encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League never endorses candidates or political parties at any level. We don't care how you vote, only that you vote. League membership is open to all genders, ages 16 and over, and we invite you all to join us. Our moderator for this primary candidate virtual forum event is Catherine Murphy. Catherine has been a member of the League since 2017, where she has filled a variety of roles at the state and local level. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to moderate our virtual 2020 primary candidate forums. These events offer voters the opportunity to hear directly from candidates in response to questions sourced from inside the community. As with everything else right now, we are learning how to modify traditional in-person events to virtual ones. The League of Women Voters records and retains a full unedited copy of all candidate forums. If any portion of the League forums are redistributed out of context to make a candidate appear to say something they did not say, or are edited to make a candidate look bad, or in any way they did not actually look in the original forum, then the League of Women Voters will alert the media, provide an unedited video for comparison, and file appropriate complaints with any applicable governing authority, local law enforcement. For the virtual 2020 forums, we record each candidate interview using the same structure: a 60-second opening statement, 90-second responses to 3 community-sourced questions, and a 60-second closing statement. The forum recordings are being offered in 2 formats. Viewers can watch each interview as a standalone choice, and they can watch a 5-part playlist which shows all candidates in the order they appear on the ballot, answering the same questions in a compiled video. Part 1 includes this introduction and each candidate's opening statement. Parts 2 to 4 show each question being asked, then the candidate's responses. Part 5 shows each candidate's closing statements, plus my closing remarks. The forum recordings will be available at the Kittitas County League website and on our YouTube channel, on Ellensburg Daily Record website, and on Ellensburg Community Television, Spectrum Channel 191, and Inland Networks. The 13th Legislative District Representative in the State House is a 2-year term. Representatives create laws on public policy matters, set levels for state spending, and raise and lower taxes. They serve on committees, which hold briefings and hearings, and they meet with and help constituents. 3 candidates have filed to run for this seat: Eduardo Castaneda Diaz, John the Man Mallon, and Tom Dent. And candidate Mallon has chosen not to respond to our invitation, so our forum will include the other 2 candidates. Now I want to welcome Eduardo Castaneda Diaz to the forum. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us. We will start with your 60-second opening statement now.
Hi, my name is Eduardo Castaneda Diaz. Thank you for having me here today. I'm a lifelong resident of Quincy, Washington. I've served in the Army and the National Guard as a culinary specialist and as a combat engineer for 5 years. I am a graduate of Washington State University. I'm currently working on my master's degree. I'm running for office to represent those voices who have been unheard for far too long, immigrants and first-generation Americans who have contributed greatly to our region in the 13th through agriculture. My parents are farm workers, immigrants from Mexico. I've been a farm worker working in Washington's cherries and apples. And it's time that we have representatives that represent the interests of the little man, those who make our economy in Central Washington possible. And as state rep, I hope to be a voice for those who have been historically unheard.
Thank you. Now I want to welcome Tom Dent to this forum. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. We will start your 60-second opening statement.
Well, thank you, Catherine, and the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. It's an opportunity, it's an incredible opportunity to reach out and touch our folks. First, I want to say that I'm truly honored to serve as the state representative for the 13th District. To serve in the State House and to represent the many, many people, 140,000 plus people that reside in the 13th District is a heavy responsibility, and it is an honor. And you have no idea what it feels like when I walk into that building, knowing that I'm carrying the hopes and the dreams and the passions of so many people with me to represent you in the State House. Things can happen there that can affect every single life of this state, and I take it very seriously that I'm there to protect you, protect your liberties, and do what I can to make your life have a better life. So again, I thank you for hosting this. It's been a very difficult campaign year, although I have been out quite a bit, but this just makes it a little better. So I appreciate it. Again, thank you.
Thank you. Question 1. What legislation will you introduce or support to address the economic recovery needs during this pandemic? Mr. Castaneda-Diaz, you have 90 seconds to respond.
Thank you for the question. First off, my heart goes out to all those who are currently surviving this pandemic with me in Washington State and in Central Washington. In order to recover, we have to invest in our infrastructure systems, invest in our bridges. For example, yesterday, Vantage Bridge, which leads to Ellensburg, a piece of it broke off while people were driving on it. That's a sign that we need to invest in our infrastructure. And infrastructure projects can help assist our residents in recovering by giving jobs to those who will take them and help us not only repair our roads and bridges, but also help their families by getting these jobs. We also have to invest in technology companies coming into Central Washington. As a resident of Quincy, I've seen the great economic boost that having companies such as Microsoft, Yahoo, Intuit, among many other companies, come in to our region and contribute financially by increasing the tax base, as well as providing jobs for those who are based not only in Quincy, but in LD13. I also support recruiting more teachers and helping small business aspiring owners to pursue their dreams. And at the state level, we can help in that pursuit.
Thank you. Question 1. If elected, what legislation will you introduce or support to address the economic recovery needs during the pandemic? Mr. Dent, you have 90 seconds to respond.
Thank you. That's a good question. So there's a piece of legislation I've worked on for I think 3 years now, and we're trying to refine it, and it's about aerospace aviation. So one of the committees I serve on is transportation, and I'm looked at as the aviation go-to guy in the legislature, as I'm the only professional pilot that serves in the legislature at this time. But we're looking at how we can fund aviation infrastructure and do a better job of it. And Bowers Field in Ellensburg is a prime example. It's short on money, and it needs a lot of improvements out there. It truly does, to keep it a safe facility. And airports are the gateway to all of our communities in the state. So aviation, aerospace is a $108 billion a year industry in the state of Washington, and that often goes unreported. So it's something I'm working extremely hard at, and what that will do, that will create jobs unbelievable amount of jobs and opportunities for our construction, our contractors, our workers to come in and start working on these airports and build facilities to improve our airport infrastructure. I have the support of almost, I think, of every industry that works around this, from port districts to commissioners to the unions to the airports to airlines. Everybody's in support of improving our funding for airport infrastructure. We just we came to an agreement as we left session. It may change a little bit, but we're going to continue to push for that in the coming session.
Thank you. Question 2. Give 3 examples of how you would support removing systemic racism and inequality through legislation. Mr. Castaneda-Diaz, you have 90 seconds to respond.
Thank you for this question. As a son of Mexican immigrants who grew up in a low-income family in Central Washington, I have had my fair share of experience with being at the lower end of American society, the part that has been forgotten historically, not only by our state, but by our nation. I support immigrant rights. I support helping communities of color who have been historically marginalized by the police system and by the legal system, by assisting those who are incarcerated and pursuing rehabilitative forms of justice, not just the punitive forms. My opponent has voted against any pro-immigration legislation to not assist undocumented students and to also continue the marginalization of immigrants in Central Washington. As a son of immigrants, I make the pledge to bring racial justice to our communities by assisting people of color and immigrants and other people who have been marginalized in our state and nation.
Thank you. Question 2. Give 3 examples of how you would support removing systemic racism and inequality through legislation. Mr. Dent, you have 90 seconds to respond.
Thank you. So that's a good question. I have a real issue with racism. I mean, I just can't believe we still have this in our society, in our world, but we do. I'm working on a couple of things I do. One around race is I met some folks there early on in Olympia, and we had several conversations around race. And, well, how do we make it better? How do we find ways for people of different races, different colors to come together and be one? So what we came up with was we began to have dinners, and I host these dinners. We call them Conversations on Race. And we invite people of different races together. And we sit down usually in somebody's home or in an intimate setting, you know, where people can really get to know each other. And we sit down and we talk about our lives and how we can help this. There's no way we can do legislation to fix that, but I can encourage my colleagues to reach out and do that, and I do. And it's been amazingly successful. It's easy to walk into a meeting like this, and there'll be anywhere from 10 to 15 folks come for dinner. And 10 or 15 folks don't like me when they walk in the door. And when they walk out the door 2 hours later, it'll only be 1 or 2 that don't like me, because they see, you know what, we can come together, we can talk, and we can be together. We are one. We have the same hopes and dreams. And I'm also putting together legislation. One of the things that has happened to a good friend of mine is his son was accused of a crime he didn't commit, and they refused to look at, the prosecutor refused to look at the video that was available. And running legislation where they have to take a look at all evidence, regardless if they want to or not, that could maybe shed some light on the crime.
Thank you. Question 3. People of color are experiencing higher COVID-19 infection and hospitalization rates. Conditions contributing to this include lack of healthcare access, poor and crowded housing, transportation, and working conditions, and lack of employer oversight. If elected, describe what measures you would support to resolve at least 2 of these conditions. Mr. Castaneda-Diaz, you have 90 seconds to respond.
Yes, the people of color have been highly and disproportionately affected by coronavirus due to low income and middle class families of color having to work minimum wage jobs to survive. They are essential workers. They are our janitors, our cooks, our field workers, and our process workers. My opponent, Tom Dett, actually wrote and spearheaded a letter to Governor Inslee requesting that the health and safety protocol be relaxed so we can have more farm workers living in temporary housing. As a state legislator, I want to make it known that our farm workers are essential and not disposable or expendable, as my opponent has made it seem. I want to strengthen the protections for farm and processing workers so that they are not disproportionately affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And as we all know, families of color are on the lower spectrum of the socioeconomic range, meaning that some of us are uninsured or underinsured or lack the resources to seek medical attention. And I want to assist families of color and those who are low income by guaranteeing a no-cost coronavirus COVID-19 vaccine if and when it is available to those who need it, which is going to be all of us. So that's why I want to assist communities of color and protecting us against COVID-19 and our health.
Thank you. People of color are experiencing higher COVID-19 infection and hospitalization rates. Conditions contributing to this include lack of healthcare access, poor and crowded housing, transportation, and working conditions, and lack of employer oversight. If elected, describe what measures you would support to resolve at least two of these issues. Mr. Dent, you have 90 seconds to respond.
Thank you. Well, that's a good question, and it's something that I have been working on since we, as I'm already in office, and we're working on this now. So one of the issues around the COVID issue is, or how it spreads, is education. So there's a lot of things we can't mandate, we can't force people to do, but we can educate them. So, case in point is that many of our farm workers, we can educate them on how this virus spreads and what they can do to protect themselves, okay? And that takes something, and they have to learn, and they have to get this education from folks they trust. And so we're working to put the right people in place to help educate them so they can understand how this spreads. We've worked really hard on reducing the issues in their housing, taking care of them, and what we do and how we can isolate or quarantine them if they do get the virus, and we're working on that. And you have to understand that many of these folks that come to work are here, they want to work, and it's real hard for them to understand you can't work because you're sick. They came to work and they don't want to stop. And so that's part of the education as well. Every single item you had on the list there, I don't have them all memorized here, but we're working on every single bullet point there to see if we can improve their condition, their position, and how we can prevent them from contracting the virus, because it's highly contagious. We all know that. So we just have to work, and so much of it is education, and we're getting there. We truly are.
Thank you. Mr. Castañeda-Diaz, you have 60 seconds to make your closing remarks.
Thank you. Thank you for this time. I want to tell the people that it's been far too long that politicians have provided mere lip service to our communities. We need politicians who do not take corporate donations, those who only listen to the constituents and are there to serve the community, not to further progress their personal interests, but to genuinely serve the community. It's time that we provide civil rights protections for our communities, as well as standing up for essential workers and marginalized communities of color. As a Latino, as a young millennial, I feel that I can do much work in bridging the gap with those who have historically been marginalized and forgotten by society, not only in every other system, but mainly in our political system. It is time for proper representation for all. And I believe that I am the best candidate for that job. Thank you for this time.
Thank you, Mr. Castaneda-Diaz, for joining us and for sharing your views with the voters of Legislative District 13. Mr. Dent, now you have 60 seconds to make your closing remarks. You may begin.
Well, thank you again. So, as I said earlier, it's truly an honor to serve, but part of serving comes to do with finding respect for other people. And to be successful in the legislature or anywhere in life, we begin with relationships built on trust and honesty. And once we build relationships, then we can learn to work together. But everything has to be built on trust, and we have to trust each other. And I've been very successful in the legislature, especially working across the aisle, because I build relationships. I keep my word. I may disagree with you 180 degrees, but I will be honest with you. This is where I stand, and I can't go someplace that I can't go. And it's what we talked about earlier about the opportunity to explain yourself. So I just, in order to be successful in my caucus and successful with the other caucus, I need to build a relationship and build them on trust. And I've been very successful doing that. I appreciate this opportunity to come and talk and share my story a little bit. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dent, for joining us and for sharing your views with the voters of Legislative District 13. Your vote matters. As we conclude, I want to remind everyone our ballots should arrive by July 17th, and we have until 8 p.m. on August 4th to return them. If you're not registered or need to change your address, you have till the 27th to do so online or by mail. After the 27th, you can register, update your registration, and vote in person through 8 p.m. on August 4th at your county auditor's office. And if you don't get your ballot, please call or visit your county auditor right away. To get more information about all of the candidates running in the 2020 primary, the Kittitas League has created a nonpartisan online voters guide. You will find links to the candidate websites and other helpful resources. You can get information also at vote411.org and at the Washington State Secretary of State's office. Thank you to the candidates who made time to participate in this event. The Kittitas League wants to also thank the Ellensburg Daily Record newspaper for co-sponsoring the 2020 virtual primary forums, and to Ellensburg Community Television, Spectrum Network, and Inland Networks for showing the forums throughout Kittitas County. Finally, thank you to the many of the League members who made this event possible. Your vote does matter. Join me by casting your ballot in the August 4th primary. Thank you.